System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' inner city left. This is the Inner City Left broadcast. Today is Sunday, June 6th. I am Amin TMK alongside Emoji Lil Tanky Sumler and Akita the Muscle. Hello, everyone. How are you doing today? Emoji, hello, my friend.
Yo, what's good? Yo, it's always good when we got the muscle up in this bit.
Always a pleasure and such a treat.
Excited to be here with y'all.
So let's get into what we want to talk about today, which is sort of this idea that I get where people are like, all these leaders are bad, like this is the best we can do, like America's the best we can do. But throughout the global South, we see that leaders are able to accomplish things. Presidents are able to accomplish things. And it's not even things that were thought to not ever to be accomplished. And I'm going to start right here. As you guys know, I am number one in the Claudia Sheinbaum fan club. Mexico will be the first nation in recent history to allow the people to vote for judges. I was saying this is one of the biggest wins for democracy in quite some time. I'll start with you, Muscle. What did you see this, and what is your reaction sort of to this momentous moment for Mexico and really just kind of for the representation of the people all over the world?
I did see it, and it was exciting, especially because when some news like this emerges, I'm always curious about what is the backlash. Like, what are people trying to represent as being terrible about having more options in which to choose your elected officials? And this is exciting because most of the countries in the world don't allow you to vote, or at least use the popular vote to elect the majority of judges, because for some reason law is considered sacrosanct, and people want to keep political power however they can. But what's interesting about this is because so few countries do it. It's exciting because it represents something new in the world. And that's what I always like my hang up is with people, as you were talking about TMK, about how they don't understand, global leaders, they have to do this. Only America has to be like this or something like that. Because at any point, we can decide on different rules, right? At any point, we can say, hey, this isn't working. We need to shift. And I see that with what Sheinbaum is trying to do, at least through this one process, in giving land back, not just saying it and being like, let's give our statement, our land statement, but not actually give the land back that we're now building on and are still colonized. And so that's what's exciting about this. And we'll see. Will it work? I don't know, but it's new. Let's see if it does work.
Yeah, Tanky, do you have any thoughts sort of on this momentous occasion here?
I remember, look, there's so many world leaders, right? And even we don't know them all. I remember when I first heard about her making herself available, her nominance, what do you call it? Her nominancy when she was nominated. And I remember reaching out to Matt. My brain is fuzzy. The poet laureate of the struggle, Matt Cedillo, wonderful guest. Because he's a person that is of Mexican heritage that has been in Mexico a number of times recently. And I just want to get like some grounding, because you have these apprehensions, right? Like, and I just remember him saying, it's all about like, did you like Obrador? If you liked Obrador, you'll probably like Sheinbaum, And it gave me a good feeling, because I feel like Obrador was the best president Mexico had maybe in the last 20 years. And I feel like what she's done is just continue on to that. She's been a good and loyal upgrade, to Obrador. Again, I think she serves as a wonderful example of what progressivism can look like when it's actually given a chance to lead. And it shows a glaring difference between what people like Kamala Harris, pretend to offer. Like within her first 100 days since inauguration, she's enacted more than 20 legislative reforms. She's worked on judicial reform to the point whereas now the literal citizens of Mexico are able to vote for their Supreme Court. Now, even though this has been mostly over ballyhooed in America, they acted like this was some horrible act that she did. I think everybody out here would feel a lot better about things in America like Roe v. Wade and Citizens United if the American citizens were the ones that were allowed to pick the Supreme Court as opposed to nominees, right? So, like, the fact that she alone made that happen should show you her commitments to democracy and at least to the will of the people. What else? She's worked to increase national security by she's blended the National Guard, the National Guard into the Ministry of National Defense. All of these things have made her country a stronger country, and this is what she's just done in the last 100 years, right? Like you compare and
100
contrast
days.
that, right? Right. I'm sorry, 100 days.
It's all good.
I'm over here trying to chinto on your ass. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
100 years. Right. No, just 100 days. Right, which is actually way more impressive. But change like that in America wouldn't happen in 100 years. So, to see it happen in 100 days is nothing short of fascinating to me.
Yeah, I remember when we had these big storms last year, and the hurricane that was going to hit the Mexico, the Yucatan Peninsula. There was a complete removal of all the citizenry that was there. They were moved into temporary housing. And what do we do here in America when those storms hit? The coastal South. We banned drones from going over those areas so you wouldn't see that the damage was as bad as it was. And this is the difference between a country like Mexico that is being, the president is Claudia Sheinbaum, and we have a much different situation happening here in the United States, where the government is not created for the people, and it is pretty insane because this was one of our biggest posts, that there are some people in the comments, whether they're bots or ops or real people, who knows? But arguing that this is somehow bad, that voting for Supreme Court justices is a negative or will somehow hurt Mexico's future, I think lets you know sort of how the West and the United States actually views voting. Voting is supposed to be for these people that the system has deemed acceptable to run, and none of those people are acceptable to us, the people, if that makes any sense. And you can see here, I think, with the monumental election that we just had in Mexico is going to continue to bring prosperity to that region, and that's all we can hope for. I have another video I would like to show everyone,
where Democratic voters did.
And this is America, by the way. This is a little bit of what we do here in America. This is on CNN. You guys know it's a very reputable news organization. And this is, one of the correspondents right here. I will play this and then Tanky, just to get your reaction, and then I'll go to you, Muscle.
By the way, it's just 3 straight nominations where Democratic voters didn't get a chance to pick the nominee. The elites picked Hillary Clinton, the elites picked Joe Biden, and the elites picked Kamala Harris. There was no actual set of voters who felt like they had a say in this.
That's what they're admitting on CNN, Tanky. I mean, we're talking about thousands of judges being voted for across Central America's biggest country. And unfortunately, we live in a country in where somehow we don't even get to pick the nominees for president.
Yeah, I mean, this is 100% indicative of what we're talking about. When when even news networks like CNN finally admit it years later. But I mean, again, think about what it was like to be on the ground, to be those activists that were saying, why are there not going to be primaries? I remember in 2020 when the Blue No Matter Who cult really kind of took over in a major way. And it was the final silencing act for all of the wannabe activists in the Democratic Party, because it was like, do you want Trump? Right. And we talked about the great opportunity that the quote unquote Democratic left, the SOC Dems, the Social Democrats, that they lost by not saying then and there, if we are not seeing the kind of changes, we don't trust Joe Biden. He doesn't have a history of leftist activities at all. He's not really a progressive candidate. If you don't give us what we need, we're going to primary you. And we will need to see these kind of changes by midterms. If we don't see these things, we will be abandoning the party en masse. They didn't do any of those things, right? And that's how you knew. The Democrats were right then given carte blanche. And Joe Biden said as much. He said, nothing will significantly change between me and Trump. So if you're asking me, do you want Trump? And your candidate is telling me nothing will significantly change, what I've learned is I'm getting Trump whether I want him or not.
Yeah. Muscle, there's all this, sort of conversation about, democracy here in America, but there doesn't really seem to be a choice. I mean, it's sort of a choice, like literally, but not in the spirit of the word, kind of what the choice is. And you see, like, CNN just basically saying, hey, it's pretty much rigged. The elites get it. And, here we are. I mean, obviously we were saying it, not just us. There's lots of people that were saying it. To kind of step back and see that there are some people sort of arguing against more democracy, kind of where we are in terms of like your thoughts on that and just like how propagandized we are to view democracy sort of as a thing that the people don't choose.
I mean, that's the thing about it. I won't even say this is particular to the United States, but the United States has taken it to a different level. This has been systemic throughout British colonization as well. And realizing that you can give people the illusion of choice, or even worse situation, you give them the Hobson's choice, which is the illusion you're picking something, but you only ever had one option anyway. And that what becomes effective about propaganda, and this is why countries that turn fascist want to eliminate education, want to eliminate critical thinking, want you to just follow all of the rules, and want to cull essentially your imagination, because the United States has not been a democracy, right? Like in so many ways, the West, I won't even say the United States, the West has co-opted the word democracy and said, well, it's whatever is white, European, cultured, this amount of money, this amount of economics, and how we see it constantly with the degradation of what a word means and how it becomes so ill-defined to the point that the United States still wants to cling to the fact that, like, no, we're a democracy, okay, with billionaires in charge of the entire political system, because if you research politics in any kind of way, you would recognize the way they are defining the word is not the actual encapsulation of that word. That doesn't represent the meaning of the word. It's also why in the course of human history, we continue to have multiple genocides over the course of our history, because we never think about what are the conditions that cause this thing and then give it that appropriate word. We're like, just slap freedom onto it. Just say that, oh, this is democracy. And then you can position who is democratic versus who is not democratic. As you pointed out, TMK, Sheinbaum keeps being raised as, well, leftists can be authoritarian too. Look at her. She's taking away choice by letting people vote, by giving land back, by ensuring that her economic system is not entirely enslaved to Western interests. But then you see too, because like propaganda works. It works on everybody. So this is not a dig against any individual. It's worked. I am susceptible to it. You guys are susceptible to it. Every person in the universe is susceptible to it because of its effectiveness and how it redefines reality for you by saying like, oh, it's only Democrats versus Republicans. What choice is that for United States citizens who want to vote for something better? Even, and I go back to, because when you were talking about judges and I was like, oh, wait, I wasn't entirely accurate. Bolivia does also vote for judges by popular vote. It's one of the only countries aside from Mexico who does it. But technically, under the United States, I believe counties in certain states allow you to vote for judges. But what choice do you have if only one person is even qualified to become a judge and then is the only person who actually wants to run for political office? Oh, I got to vote for one person on the ballot. I got a choice, y'all. That's not a choice. That is not a choice. And as I said too, why is it in the United States we are only allowed to vote for people instead of the things that matter to us? Because if the United States citizens got to vote for their hourly or yearly wage, that shit would go up. If the United States citizens got to vote for, do I want healthcare for myself? That shit would be automatic. We would get rid of insurance companies. But oh, we never get to vote for that. We got to vote for a guy who votes for a guy who votes for a guy. Like, that's not choice.
Well said. Well said. I feel like you was cooking right there. Okay. I want to move just on to another leader. There are many to talk about. But I heard this too. We hear this a lot. Me and Tanky do. These other leaders are like not doing enough for Palestine, you know, and like, hey, I think everyone who cares about Palestine should acknowledge that they need to do more for Palestine. And hey, that probably includes nation states as well. But let's not pretend like any of those other nations are actively participating in the Palestinian Holocaust like the United States, Israel, and much of Europe. This is the same thing that happened with Mexico. We hear all the time, oh, is Claudia Sheinbaum a Zionist? Simply because she's Jewish. We have some other Jewish people that are on this program that might be able to speak to that a little bit better, but just because you are Jewish does not mean that you are a Zionist. And because of, her religious affiliation that's sort of like been thrust upon her. But time and time again, she's come out and spoken for Palestine. We saw this again with Nicolas Maduro when there was this conversation on, we rigged the election, this, that, and the third. And all you have to look is what was said when Nicolas Maduro and then versus what his opponent had to say at the polls when they voted. When Nicolas Maduro's opponent came out of the polls, he said Israel has a right to defend itself. And when Nicolas Maduro came out the poll, he said free Palestine. So we should already stop trying to push sort of these narratives onto Central and South America in terms of their support for Palestine. Yeah, Tanky, did you want to say something?
I mean, when we talk about, I think that's another example, right? When we're talking about how Claudia Sheinbaum is this face of, Central American leftism. I think by that same token, Nicolas Maduro is definitely the face of South American leftism. I mean, we can talk about Lula, and Lula's not bad. Lula's actually probably a little bit closer to Sheinbaum than he is to Maduro, but Sheinbaum's closer to Maduro than she is to Lula, It's important not just to say these names, but to talk about who they were. Nicolas Maduro was a fucking bus driver, man. He was a bus driver. And then after he was a bus driver, he was a union leader. These, you see what I'm saying? This is real leftism where your whole life you've been a servant of the people. You compare and contrast that with American leaders that are all incredibly, absolutely coming from the most privileged class of Americans, right? You'll never find an American president that was a bus driver. The closest you get to that is our favorite little op, House of Rep. Oh, it was a bartender. Where were you a bartender? For how long? I mean, did you know what I'm saying? Did you intern as a bartender? But like even that's the closest you get to that. You don't get a person that's truly built a career out of being with the people, around the people, being supported by the people. And like when you look at what they've done, like he continues to win. This is a person that in 2013 he had 50.62% of the vote. Like, that's more than Biden got. That's not one of these Saddam Hussein, he won with 105% of the vote type, right? You don't even have that. Like, these are very realistic numbers. But 50% of the people is a mandate, right? 50% of the people is the people have decided. 50% of the people didn't vote for Joe Biden in America. 50% of the people didn't vote for Donald Trump in America, right? So like this is what's happening with these kind of people. Like they're able to really tap into something in their people and they're beholden to the people and not necessarily the corporate interest, which will inherently make you an enemy of the American empire because people come last.
Yeah, a great point. I'm so glad that you mentioned Nicolas Maduro. Lula, because like there are, of course, always, ways that politicians can get better. We are, socialists and communists, and, we are looking forward to this sort of, a nation state built for the workers, by the workers and for the people and by the people, which is the things that are supposed to be said. So I do want to, again, I want to bring this back to Palestine because I think everyone knows it is a litmus test for what happens for, your humanity sort of in today's society. And I apologize to anybody here who is not... Okay. Does not speak Portuguese. Obviously, it'll be seen on the screen. So if you're a podcast listener, I'll try to give you the best synopsis. But this is Brazilian President Lula, and this is him talking about Palestine. You'll see it on the screen. I'll play this, and then Muscle, I'll give you an opportunity to react, and you as well, Tanky.
Aquilo não é mais guerra, é genocídio. Você não pode, a pretexto de encontrar alguém, matar mulheres e crianças. Deixar crianças com fome. Eu não sei se vocês viram a cena de 2 crianças que estavam carregando farinha para comer e que foram mortas. Ou seja, é exatamente por conta de que o povo judeu sofreu na sua história que o governo de Israel deveria ter bom senso e humanismo no trato com o povo palestino. Eles se comportam como se o povo palestino fosse cidadão de segunda classe. E nós temos dito há muito tempo, o Brasil foi o primeiro país a reconhecer o Estado palestino aqui na América do Sul, e eu volto a reafirmar, só haverá paz quando a gente tiver consciência de que o palestino tem direito ao seu Estado, à terra demarcada, aquele acordo de 1967.
And he's essentially right there. So for all the people who are not listening to us on YouTube, he's basically talking about the Palestinian people, this utilization of anti-Semitism weaponized against the Palestinian people, talking about going back to the 1967 borders, which essentially what Palestinians are asking for. These things would be an absolute death sentence in terms of your political standing here in the United States. Like just your reaction to that, Muscle, and then I'll get, Tanky, I'll get you right after.
So this is representative of what I was talking about earlier, how the West, or really any political power, I won't even say the West, because at some point it will shift, right? And maybe, so any political power, how they then begin redefining your reality. As Lula points out here, they're redefining what is anti-Semitic versus even what is a genocide, because of course, Israel's main message on this is that it's not a genocide because they have the right to protect themselves. And then even how it redefines what is the right to protect yourself. Because we see this, of course, as Tanky points out, where do we see this? In the Deep South, where protecting protecting yourself became leave to just shoot any Black person that looked at you sideways, right? That it was like, oh, well, you're out late and I had a right to protect myself from this Black person that I automatically saw as a threat. And how it is an ongoing struggle because, of course, those in political power want to obfuscate what things mean so that you will start agreeing with them. And that's why it is so important. Like, critical thinking is beyond just basic literacy and understanding what words means, but it's also like, how do people string along a particular word and couple it with a particular image to get you to react in a way that is agreeable to the stance that they want you to take. And we've seen this time and time again throughout United States history, because of course everybody talks about the United States Civil War and how they really fought against England and won their freedom. At the same time, they were committing genocide against the Native Indigenous people across the Americas. At the same time that they decided, hey, enslaving people from the African continent is a thing that I want to do, purporting to be a land of the free. And immediately that got redefined. And then we see it propelling into what even is democracy. It's not what you can vote for. We didn't get a chance to vote in the primaries. We're barely getting a chance to vote for our presidential election or anybody that he puts into power. We don't even know what the 2026 midterms will look like, assuming that they even happen, because who the hell knows? Zelensky's already made it clear that in some cases, when you're protecting freedom, you don't have to go through all of the political processes that are an established part of being a democratic country. Again, we're redefining everything, and Lula is right, as many other countries are trying to say it. That's why they keep saying the word genocide, that Google and Meta and all of these corporations are also trying to hide, because they're making bank off of the slaughter of millions of people across the world. The direct slaughter through the sales of weapons, through those weapons being dropped by Israel, the United States, France, England, as well as just the political sanctions that get placed on countries, murdering millions of people because through starvation, through eliminating their access to clean water, through eliminating their access to
Nestle.
have agriculture. Yes. And Nestle, oh, look at this fresh, clean, pure water. But all of the propaganda is there, and all of the words, how we understand the world, because I'm even seeing it with AI, how even AI is obfuscated into what is AI versus the shit that I hate, which is really descaling people and taking up way too much energy to not even do the job. We're only finding out that it's Indians and really poor Africans who are getting undercut in the market versus something that a tool that can help identify cancer cells versus the machine that really helps a video game become exciting and new. And so all of this becomes compressed, like the word democracy and freedom and protecting yourself and defense and who has a right to what. And even hearing that, and it gets so frustrating because we have to call it out again and again. This is immovable. I think Takey even made a joke earlier about how we can't even say literally anymore, because that now means both literally and figuratively, which makes it a useless fucking word for clarity at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if I could just add in, what I would say is I've been spending a lot of time trying to sort these different leaders around the world. And you can kind of sort them into two different types of leftist leader that exist, right? You have the militants, the Ibrahim Traore's, I hesitate to say Putin in the context of a leftist because he's not. He is a billionaire. But he leads a resurgent Russia that stands as a militant anti-Western nation, right? And of course, that also includes the Maduros of the world. The other type of leftist leaders you're seeing in the world are what I would like to say are the decent people, right? Sheinbaum. She's not militant. She doesn't want to have war with the United States. She's not trying to overthrow the West. She wants to make a decent type of country. I think Xi Jinping certainly falls into this category. He wants to make a decent China. I think Lula is that kind of a leftist, if I can go there, right? What makes him push up against these things, the things that violate what he sees as a decent, morality code. And truth, these are the closest thing to real liberals that you'll ever get. What liberals think they are. You know what I'm saying? The people of the world, the democracy now type leftist, right? Those are people like Lula, that he should be their wet dream. Like, what offends him the most about this is this just not a decent way to be. You don't kill women. You don't kill children. You don't kill civilians. You see what I'm saying? Like, that's what bucks against his sense of justice, right? And it's no different from like when he was, like a week or two ago talking about the interview where, when he had met with Biden and how Biden was insistent that we must destroy Russia. We must destroy, like, which is quite a position. Like, how do you destroy the nation with the most nuclear weapons in the world? Like, how does you got to have an incredible plan, right? Because hopefully that plan can include war, right? Like, because you understand the consequences of war is they might actually use their nuclear missiles, of which they have a qualitative and quantitative advantage over the West. Not just America, but over the West. As we continue to see the failures of what Western missile defense even looks like in the face of the fabled Golden Dome, which is on paper only so far, and so like that's what you see with Lula. I used to really try to rack my head about like what kind of a man is Lula, because I was so disappointed in him in the way that as one of the founding members of BRICS, he's treated Venezuela, but to someone like Lula, a decent man who wants to be a decent socialist, he's afraid. He's afraid of the militants. He sees them as troublemakers. He thinks there's a way that you can have a negotiation with the West and they can come to see their ways. Like, you claim to be human rights, right? Well, this is not very humane. I think in many ways, a leader like Lula still hasn't come to the reality of what he wants for his country and what Brazil's role in this new multipolar world will be.
I want to play this because this is sort of the other side, because it's versus American politicians. This is supposed to be the person I'm going to show, AOC, is supposed to be one of the most progressive, right? She's supposed to be the head of the squad, and whatever happened with that whole thing, whatever's left of the faux leftist area, faux left of the sort of American political system, at least in terms of blue and red. Let's see here. Yeah, so AOC, this is her talking last year. This is, yeah, I'll just go ahead and play it, and I will get your reaction, or I'll just move on. Let's see what we got here.
I would say that the United States, our responsibility is to the stability and the security of the region. That means being able to support, yes, Israel in its defensive capacities, right? In its ability, in that context.
So she's saying here that, hey guys, we have to make sure that we're giving what Israel needs to sort of, make a way, or like, this is not the type of language that we hear from Maduro or Lula or Claudia Sheinbaum or the president in Chile. I'm sorry, the president in Colombia, the president in Bolivia. Like, it's not just those countries, but it just, and we haven't even talked about, Cuba and sort of the remnants of Fidel and of course the Castro family, and as well as communism, sort of one of the last bastions of that. But I do want to just move on because there's a lot to talk about here. There was a lot of people we could talk about, and we've been talking about Traore. Sorry for the people who are, again, on the podcast who don't speak French. We'll try to do the best we can to let you know what they're saying. But hey, it's good to listen to non-English speakers sometimes. The rest of the world has to deal with it. So, you guys got to deal with it as well. So here we go. And then after this, I'll get your response, Tanky, and then I'll go to you, Muscle.
peuples sont en Nous avons participé hier à la parade. Bien avant ça, la veille, nous avons participé aussi à certains événements culturels. Mais de tout ça, je dirais que nous avons appris beaucoup de leçons et qui doivent nous amener encore à réfléchir plus, à nous remotiver pour relancer la machine africaine. Et aujourd'hui, beaucoup de peuples sont en train de se battre pour leur survie, pour leur souveraineté, pour vivre en paix. Et le Sahel fait partie de cette zone où l'impérialisme est en train de se manifester de façon très violente. Et avec tout ce que nous vivons, je souhaite que nous puissions donc honorer la mémoire de tous ceux-là, tous ces combattants qui se sont donnés corps et âme et qui nous ont évancés à l'au-delà dans ce combat contre l'impérialisme, contre le néocolonialisme. Je vous demande donc d'observer une minute de silence. Mais c'est pour vous dire que vous avez la chance d'être ici, je dirais, à l'origine de la chimie et des mathématiques. Parce qu'en Russie, il y a eu des savants dans ces domaines, que ce soit la physique, la chimie, les mathématiques. Profitez donc, apprendre de manière pratique pour que ça serve à nous. Parce qu'un pays est faible, il est voué à disparaître dans ce monde de prédation. Il faut qu'on soit fort. Et aujourd'hui, les pays qui sont nucléaires sont forts. Ils ne perdent jamais une guerre.
So we see him talk. He's here meeting with the students in Moscow. I don't know if you guys remember, we talked a little bit about this. Him being, when he went to meet with Putin, there was a large conversation surrounding kind of like students that were going to study there, Burkina Faso students that are going to be studying there. So he's meeting them there. And he's, obviously talking about, sort of education and all those good things, but he's also mentioning things like imperialism, neocolonialism, a zone where colonization has created a very violent backlash. And, from General Langley here in the United States, sort of talking about why this guy is like very bad for the people of Burkina Faso. When you see that, you see a president talking about imperialism and neocolonialism, something we never hear from our politicians here. How do you react to that? I'll start with you, Tanky, and then Muscle, I'll go to you.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about Traore a couple of times on this podcast. I remember Dr. CBS had a wonderful conversation about him. Look, Traore is the face of everything the West hates. And I think, again, the fact that he's even allowed to live, and I hesitate to use that kind of phraseology, but it's the truth. There was a time not that long ago that someone like Ibrahim Traore would have been couped and killed. Look at the color revolutions in Egypt, not very far away from where he is. In the 60s, he would have absolutely been killed. Just a couple of things that he's done as the president in the past 2 years. He's increased Burkina Faso's GDP from 18.8 billion to 22.1. He has removed the American drone base that was there. This was a huge part of AFRICOM. Think about that. The fact that the Americans literally had drone bases. Their largest drone base in Africa was in Burkina Faso. Why would that be? He removed the French military from his country. Again, these things seem like provocative actions unless you ask yourself the opposite. Why aren't Burkina Faso troops allowed to station bases in France? Right? Why can't Burkina Faso have a drone base in the United States of America? These are things that Western countries do to subordinate countries that they see as less than. These are not the actions that of equals. If you could do these things, then I cannot do these things. Other things that he's done: he stopped the export of unrefined Burkina Faso gold to Europe. He has now taken control of the export of uranium. Under the French, Burkina Faso was getting about $12 a barrel for their uranium yellow cake, which is unrefined uranium. So I found that to be interesting when he was talking about nuclear countries are strong. I would disagree with him where he says nuclear countries never lose wars. Nuclear countries have definitely lost wars. The United States lost a war in Korea. They lost a war in Vietnam. But I understood the essence of what he was trying to say. He's provided access to improve.
Certainly, North Korea could be an example of get a nuclear bomb, get a nuclear weapon, and people might want to leave you alone a little bit, though.
Leave the hell alone, right? And so, yeah, he means from a resistance point of view, not necessarily from an offensive point of view. He's increased agriculture and also the refinement of these type of goods, right? Because it doesn't mean a lot to produce, say, wheat, right? If you have to send that wheat to, I don't know, France to be refined when flour is the product that's really going to have like some margin, of capitalist gain. And so like these are the very real ways he has improved the life of people in this country. I think one of the most interesting things he's done, and again, it goes to the point of, right, what kind of leader you are. He has reduced the salaries of government ministers and parliamentarians by 30% and increased the salaries of civil servants by 50%. And he's also paid off all of Burkina Faso's local debts. That's what he's done in the last 2 years, right? All while continuing to tilt closer to an orbit of the Russians, because the Russians never invaded Burkina Faso. I mean, this is the part of the legacy of the West that the West doesn't want to deal with. The fact that European nations have a predatory history in Africa, and with very few exceptions, most African nations do not feel like they can, in good conscience, as a decolonized place, have these type of continued relations with Europe. But Russia is blameless in this. Russia did many things in their history, but they never invaded Africa and sold slaves. So they're going to have a better relationship, and this continues to manifest.
We see people like in history that we look up to, the Gaddafis, the Sankaras, the Patrice Lumumbas, and those people aren't somehow never seem to make it to prominence. I'll just ask you this, Muscle, sort of like what kind of hope do we have, when we see people like, Traore out here kind of, reinvigorating sort of the spirit of sort of these leaders that we've lost from the past?
We always have hope. I know things seem incredibly bleak. They do, and every generation has to face the horrifying reality in which that we find ourselves at any point in time. And yet there has always been hope. There have always been community members who become leaders who really help organize and fight for it. That even with how depressing things have been in Gaza and how depressing things have been for watching the entire global South continue to suffer, especially now with climate change, that there is always hope, that we're still finding new ways to overthrow these governments. France, he kicked them out. Even though France was trying to pretend that like Burkina Faso was a protectorate and like, oh, you're not a colony, but we're taking all of your shit. Again, redefining what does it mean to be a colonial power and what does it mean to be under the oppression of that colonial power.
And he said neocolonialism too, specifically.
Yes. Absolutely, because it has been well past time for these countries to do right. And this is, even as scary as the internet is getting, this is part of some of the magic, which is why AI is trying to obfuscate all of the results that we get. Because they don't want reliable sources. They want us to constantly question and believe that there's no hope, that there's nobody who will step up. And it's us, it's each individual who can do something in your community right now to help the people there. That it is giving up what we feel is a little bit of power and is meaningless in the sum of things when there are billionaires who have taken over as much of the globe as they can and have no plans to stop. Right? Because Tanky's brought this up and he's referenced movies about it as well, because there's no such thing as enough for people on that scale. Their greed is immense and endless. And so we have to put into places things and people, we have to stop them how we can. And that's what we're seeing with leaders. And this is why we also need a political spectrum, because the West does try to say, oh, that was just the time. That was just how it was at that time. You know, people didn't know women had rights. Bullshit. Over the course of entire global history, you're saying women never had rights? Like, that's crazy that, like, gay people didn't exist, that Black people didn't exist across the entire globe, even in places that white people were like, you were never here in the Middle Ages. Yes, we were. The Ottoman Empire extended very far, right? There was international trade. And so we can't ever give in to the illusion that there is no hope. We can grieve that, hey, we're not seeing maybe some of the results that we're hoping for now. We can't erase those feelings, but there is always hope. And this is why we have to pay attention to what's happening across the globe and see how are they doing it. You guys have talked about this too, that we can be inspired by protests that are happening globally. We saw this with Palestinian protesters who were helping Ferguson protesters and vice versa. People who are warning other people, oh, how do we take down drones? We don't know right now, but give the collective consciousness time to figure it out. And now we know how. And it's as simple sometimes as throwing a rock really well, having that depth perception, having that arm strength. But there are ways that we can combat systems because humans are constantly changing, growing, evolving, thinking. And we will always find a way to escape this level of oppression that we've been experiencing.
I got one more as we wrap this thing up. Thank you guys, as always. Again, I just want to remind our listeners, you know, when it comes to the oppression that it happens around the world, let's worry about yourself. Let's worry about the country that you're dealing with. Let's worry about the country that you're living in, because right now your country is participating actively, enabling and actively participating in a Holocaust. And there's one more guy I want to talk about. Of course, we could go all day on this. You know, we could go all day. Lots of good leaders out there in the world. But I'm still getting used to this thing, guys. There's one big guy, you know, and it's not Joe Biden. It's not even Traore, who, of course, you know, we love too. It's the real big guy right here. Xi Jinping. This is him saying that Gaza belongs to Palestinians and it's their land. And it's not a bargaining chip in political deals. And this is from one of our sort of, you know, inner city left friends, Eco Marxy. Yep. This guy is better than any U.S. president in history. Talking about Xi Jinping, Big Xi. Tanky, we can look at China right now. We can look to it and the economic miracle that it is, the political miracle that it is. And of course, there is many people that are responsible for that. It's one of the biggest countries in the world, most populated, second only to India. But this guy's been sort of at the head of this. Not only that, did something that I thought was really, you know, really unselfish and sort of put an age limit on that presidency. Can you talk a little bit about Xi Jinping and sort of how he has helped bring China to prominence?
Yeah, so the thing I would say about Xi Jinping is, like, the best way to understand him is compare and contrast him with the people that have come before. You know what I'm saying? I mean, Hu Jintao, who was the premier before him, was an accomplished man, but China was nowhere near a technological leader at that time. You know, you can argue that Hu Jintao did a lot of work to prepare the team, but Xi is what made them a playoff caliber team. You know, I mean, very different type of leadership. Xi has waged a war against corruption in China. You know, I was recently joking with a friend of mine. It's like, everybody loves what's happened with Luigi, but that's an individual act, right? Like, you compare and contrast that with China. It's like there's no need for Luigi's in China because China punishes that type of corruption. China ensures that if you do those type of actions, if you are corrupt in China, you will pay. Like, corruption under Xi Jinping is lower than it's been in 30 years in China. And it's always been much lower than, you know, Western standards of corruption. Now, what do we mean by punishment? Those people that cheat, Chinese citizens that harm them in major ways. These type of CEOs that money glut at the expense of people getting services, those people are removed, right? And again, this bucks with the liberal mind state, you know, because like Batman is like, oh, Batman doesn't kill, right? Like that's kind of the liberal mind. But like when you're dealing with these kind of people, they're killing people. Like their greed is literally killing people. And like when you are tasked with being a gardener of the people, which is what leadership should look like, as opposed to leadership amongst the people that is the ownership class, which is what Western leadership looks like, you react very seriously to these things. But at the same time, right, even for that type of increased enforcement, right, he's brought a lot of calm to China. Like the regions of Tibet, Xinjiang, and Hong Kong have all prospered. Beijing, when you look at these cities now, like in these regions, they look like they're 70 years in the future compared to like American standards of building. He's created additional tension for the reunification of Taiwan. That's always been an agenda, though. I mean, and that went all the way back to Mao. The difference is, under Xi Jinping, they have the ability to do it. I would say what he's done with his very fast-paced modernization of the Chinese military, the PLA is probably the most capable, untested military force the world has ever known. I say untested. You know what I'm saying? Because we know the capabilities of the United States. We know the capabilities of the Russian Federation. No one really even knows what the capabilities of the Chinese People's Liberation Army is. We simply know that their technology is no longer beneath the Americans. It's at least peer quality and in very important key technical demographics, they're actually leading. Like China is leading the United States in technical aspects of, like, for example, on aircraft carriers, right? They've moved away from lever systems and they're using electromagnetism to propel their planes off the runways. I mean, that's incredible. That's Star Trek shit, They are the second largest aircraft carrier fleet in the world, second only to America, right? They've done an incredible amount of a great job at fighting desertification in the Gobi Desert, reclaiming that land and allowing it to become habitable to humans again. You know what I'm saying? Like that's a huge attack against climate change. This is a person who's actively working to do climate engineering in a way that makes Earth more, not less, habitable to human beings. I mean, presumably for the Chinese, but I mean, humans nevertheless. Incomes have risen. The standard of living in China has increased under Xi Jinping. And these are, again, the things that make him a danger to the West. It's not that he's militant like a Traore or like a Putin. It's that he shows legitimately there is another way we can go that is not necessarily a military conflict. It's a competing ideal that is winning. He's dangerous to the West the same way someone like Toussaint Louverture is dangerous. He's dangerous the same way someone like Castro is dangerous, because he's allowing there to be a successful alternative to the model that is proposed by the West. And that in and of itself is dangerous.
I guess we kind of see sort of, Xi Jinping is one of those presidents that you see, touring the poorest villages. He's going to the countryside. He's meeting with farmers, and we're supposed to be like getting this right with like our AOCs, the quote unquote bartenders, being with the people, but we mainly just see them in sort of photo ops and things like that. Keita, sort of like what is this disconnect here between like a president like Xi Jinping, who's a president over, 1.5 billion people, one of the most important and influential people of our time, still going to, these small like fishing villages and things to talk to the people. But we don't get that from even our like senators and things like that. The ones who are saying that they're supposed to be for the people, all seem to kind of just be for the ruling and the upper class sort of general narrative.
So much of it is cultural differences, right? And this is why I wish the West would appreciate more about all of the rich cultural history that humans have formed across the globe in different pockets of society. Is just trying to figure out everything. What does it mean to live in a community? What does it mean to live on this planet? What are those stars up in the sky? And right now, we're the United States, because there's always this illusion of the United States being this bastion. And that's part of the propaganda. That is part of the really flashy story behind the United States. But for whom? When British colonizers came to this country, they were mass murdering human beings that they did not recognize as such. They were slaughtering all of the natural wildlife that this country had at its inceptions, that they destroyed forests that have been standing for hundreds and hundreds of years. And what does that story of colonization do over the course of hundreds of years like we're facing right now versus China, where their cultural history is based, and this has been our land. There have been multiple factions who have fought over pieces of it, but right now, China has a mentality that we are one China. And so what does that kind of cultural presence do when everyone feels culturally invested in somebody else? Whereas in somewhere like the United States, which started off as oppressive, as a British colony, as the white people oppressing and attempting to commit genocide against the Native Indigenous people, and then enslaving Black Americans, and then diminishing anybody else who attempted to come to this country and giving them immediate hierarchy within which to fall, versus a place like China, whose cultural hierarchy might look different. I'd have to live there and study it for hundreds of years, right? But it's different, as it is different even in a place like Korea, which has also faced different kinds of colonization, and that what China faced under God, honestly, with the Opium Wars and their country, the West attempts to crush that country into oblivion, just like they're trying to do elsewhere. But our politicians don't care. They know that the average citizen does not have the ability to put them in power or doesn't, which is a fallacious illusion, because what folks coming forward, what the protesters are showing, is that we absolutely do have the power because we outnumber you, which is why you see the domestic police force go up as a domestic military arm for the wealthy. But that also this power has been intentionally taken away, diminished, and eroded through destroying our education system, so that we don't even recognize as individual citizens what is our power. It's not human rights to me. When you realize these are my rights, these are rights that belong to every single human being across the globe, regardless of what happens and regardless of the actions that they've taken, there should still be afforded basic human rights. You operate differently. And right now, those senators, as one senator recently said at a town hall, well, we all die. And for us to still put them in places of power and give us that illusion of well, she's the only one we can vote for, or he's the only one we can vote for, AOC is our only option. No, that's never our only option. We talked about it in the lead up to this election last year, that it was we have other options. Try the Green Party, try investing in any third party in your country, because what we're seeing is an ongoing erosion over the course of 200 years, an ongoing erosion of what it means to vote for and elect officials who care about humanity across the globe, regardless of our race, ethnicity, gender. And we're just not in that place right now.
Yeah. I think it was just well said by both of y'all. I'm always so appreciative to have us all together. We started this thing a while ago, and it's look what's happened, guys. Look how well we're doing. I want to give a shout out to our podcast listeners. We're available everywhere you find podcasts: Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio. You can always check out our Podbean site, innercityleft.com, for some more information about what we're doing. Opportunity to buy Fables, Foibles, and Other American Sins, as you see right behind me. Boom, right there. Very great work of poetry by Umoja Sumler. Please check that out. Shout out to our patrons, guys. We love you. We really do. And, the show, I always feel good, like, every time I see anyone, kind of getting involved with what we're doing. Again, we have free subscriptions, and we welcome all. We don't welcome all. No ops, please. No ops. And like, subscribe, send it to your friends. Say, hey, check it out. Inner City Left. They're a bunch of cool people. And I think that's about it. Any final thoughts from you, Muscle or Tanky?
Immense love. I know things are bleak. Things are in despair. It feels like it's getting worse every day, because it is. We'll acknowledge that reality. But as TMK said, I'm very appreciative to be in this space with the three of y'all, everybody who interacts with us on IG, on Patreon, in real life, especially asking these hard questions, doing the hard work, because it's not easy. If it were easy, then everybody would be doing it. But it does take work, and it's worthwhile work. It's meaningful. So thanks, y'all.
I would say stop acting as if the West is the only place that practices liberal democracy, or as if liberal democracy is the only right way to have a government that serves the people. We didn't even talk about the Mick Wallaces and the Claire Dailies, that are doing work, even though they've lost their chairs in the European Union, right? I mean, these are guys that are a whole nother level of commitment to human ethics, social justice, and human rights is the word I was looking for. And again, right, liberal democracy gave you Volodymyr Zelensky, who has used his martial law to extend his reign in power so long that when he first came into power, Trump was president the first time. This dude went through Trump, Biden, and now the second Trump administration. This is a person that hasn't had an election, though he was due to have one almost 2 years ago, right? So, like, how can you tell me then that this is a liberal democracy while you still have critiques over the way that perhaps, Lebanon holds elections, or Venezuela, or Mexico, right? So again, as always, worry about yourself.
Yeah. For Keita the Muscle and Umoja Lil Tanky Sumler, I'm Amin TMK. This is the Inner City Left broadcast. Peace. System riding to the core. Yeah.
Reppin' Inner City Left.